Hi, I'm April Staines, and this is actually my fourth Go Girl Go for IT event. But this is the first time we've done it virtually, which is rather exciting. Just a little bit about myself. Today, my full-time job is or my daytime job, as I like to describe it, is as a software engineer for NAB. I'm actually the principal engineer in the home lending space. I'm also a co-founder of a group called Girl Geek Academy, which was founded in 2014 to increase the number of women in tech. And during my spare time, I run a startup called April Storm 3D, which is a additive manufacturer, which uses advanced kind of technologies like 3D printing to make stuff. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I started my technology career in the 1990s, just before Y2K, and I started as a computer programmer, or analyst programmer, I think was my official title. I had gone to university, I'd gone to Monash University, and I had graduated with a degree in infotech. I had started really writing software for small companies, and had actually, by the time I hit about 2000, I'd already worked for about 2 or 3 software companies in my very short career, just because there was so much demand for software engineers at the time, and there still is. From there, I sort of started to work in systems that had to do more with financial services, basically banking and finance. And today I work for NAB. In my career at NAB, I've done everything from work in security, IT security, that is, and as well as I was the architect in the digital space, and I always found that the terminology for a digital architect interesting, given that's all we do. Yeah, so now I've sort of gone back to being an engineer, and that's primarily because I like to make stuff. I describe myself as a maker first and foremost, and I've had many different titles over the years. But what I like to do is create, and I like to use technology to create. But more so, I find that technology is really an enabler. It has really allowed me to create things that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to do without technology. So whether that be software or whether it might be hardware. One of my sort of side gigs, I guess, the startup company that uses 3D printing and advanced tech, we get to make stuff. And I get to make things like stuff that are here. And I make props and stuff for science fiction movies. So this is like a little spaceship. I haven't glued the seat on, but basically a little spaceship thing, and it's going to be used in a locally produced movie where they still use models rather than using CGI. It has a more authentic feel, especially if you're going for a sort of a more retro look in your movie. And of course, there's bigger props like the R2. There's a replica from obviously Star Wars, and various helmets and so on. And actually, towards the back there's actually some components from a rocket. And I'm working with a startup in Adelaide, which are building a rocket that will deliver a small payload into orbit. Very exciting, because we'll be using 3D printing or additive manufacturing to actually produce that rocket. So all of a sudden now we've got literally the stars, and the sky is the limit as far as technology is concerned. And it's happened, quite rapidly. Just close the airlock, as it were, which is a bit odd. And yeah, so my journey sort of from there, I basically in the last in 10, 15 years have been working with other things as well as do my regular day job, because I like to create, I like to make stuff, and and the thing with additive manufacturing and those sort of technologies is it allows you to make things, more easily than it would have been, 20, 30 years ago, simply because the technology didn't exist to be able to build some of these things. So I don't need to know how to fabricate a rocket engine, as much as using traditional technologies, because now I can do things that a 3D printer can do that I couldn't do 30, 40 years ago. So that really opens up the world as far as what you can actually achieve and where technology is going. And I guess what I'm trying to say is technology has really evolved. And in your career, if you choose to to have a career in tech, or in STEM in general, it will evolve as well. So what you start with is probably not going to be what you end up with. And even today, looking at the technology that's out there, it will give you more or less a shape of where it's going to go, but don't expect it to be static. When you think about cell phones and iPads and so on, well, 15, 20 years ago, they didn't exist. So can you imagine writing software, how that has changed in the last 15, 20 years? The platforms are completely different. The way you interact with socials and social media, well, that didn't exist 20, 30 years ago. So there are a lot of opportunities now that have now presented themselves. And you're in a unique position to build on top of all the good work that's come before you. How do you do it? How do you get involved in tech? Well, I mean, if you're passionate about tech, that's quite easy. But I think what I found in my journey is that I will meet women, predominantly women, but men as well, but who are no good at technology. That's all too hard. And it's completely unfounded and untrue. Technology doesn't need to be highly technical. There are aspects of technology, aspects of working in IT, for example, that do not necessarily mean that you need to be a low-level assembly programmer. You can be a designer. And understanding and being able to communicate and manage people is equally as important as understanding the nuts and bolts that go into making something work. And all of these things are required to deliver software and to make the future. So my message to you is, if you like to make and you like to create and you like to problem solve, I think technology is a good fit. It certainly has worked that way for me. So, as far as career and how do you get there? Well, I mean, obviously finish your studies. It helps to understand technology and have a grounding in technology. And most of the time that's, concentrating on things that give you that grounding, which will include things like mathematics, but you don't need to be. I was never actually that great at mathematics. It was okay. It wasn't probably my core strength, but I did like science, and I did like the whole concept of space exploration, for example. Probably a bit of ahead of my time, but that having that passion, I think, is very important. But it's the passion to create. It's not the passion to be a nerd. It's not the passion to I think it's the passion to create and the passion to solve problems. Now, you could be solving problems to create great software, to enable a business and a business model, but you could also be doing that to solve environmental problems, to solve social problems. It doesn't need to necessarily be highly technical. And these are all very important aspects that all come together. Anyway, so I hope you all got something out of that. And I hope you all have an amazing Go Girl for IT event. Enjoy the show.